In the world of the old man, I don't think that there is anything more scary than a Dan Chase who believes all hope is lost. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. The 12th episode, 12th, chapter 12, if you will, of The Old Man. Season 2 is here. It's a doozy. It's fascinating too because when you really think about the episode as a whole, it is a bottle episode. The majority of it takes place in one scene, one setting, but there are things that interact and have an effect on what happens in that setting. Essentially, we find that Harper, Dan, and Zoe are trying to find refuge, and they're going to Harold's home to do so. Before we go there, though, we go and see the funeral, if you will, of Hamza. Khadijah, Emily's aunt, Tariq, and the rest of the villagers are saying paying their respects to Hamzat as they see him off. And so we get an overlay of Emily kind of going through the process and what it is she has to do to sort of deal with this. It's a lengthy one. I don't remember it all verbatim, but the gist of it is that she's telling her father, she's writing this down. She's telling her father that, hey, I have been unlocked. A new person, the old me has died, and the new me is being born. And in this, I am taking pieces of what everybody has sort of given me in life to create who I am. She's like, I don't know you. She's like, I know who you are, but I don't know you. I don't know the things that make you who you are. I know those fine things. She's saying, I don't know those moments, but I didn't know them from my mother either. And so I am trying to fill in the holes of those to sort of figure out who I truly am. She also then says something to the fact that, hey, if you see, when you see my mom in the afterlife, please be kind to her. Please be nice to her. She did the best that she could, and it's a touching moment to sort of her having this last piece to say to Hamza. She chooses not to say anything to the villagers. She keeps quiet, doesn't let anything. She lets Khadijah and Tariq handle that piece, but she is at least there. She then burns the letter and sort of blows it in the ashes of the wind at the funeral, and so that's sort of her moment. And she and Khadijah then see Tariq, because Tariq said the second that the funeral was over, he's getting out of there. So Tariq and Farouk are about to board a helicopter, and Emily's having a conversation with Farouk, just really being honest with her and talking to him. They get on the helicopter and take off, and Khadijah asks, and we're like, "Well, what did you tell him?" And she's like, "I just kept it a buck. I kept it real. Told him that Tariq is a good man and that he will take care of you. He will watch after you, but also don't believe everything you hear. People are going to lie to you. Uh, it's going to shape who you are as a person, but I don't want to lie to you and have your life be built up on a lie like mine was. I want to be completely honest with you as I can." You're just like, well, that's the correct thing to have done. That's what you should have done. Then they hear gunfire back in their village. They turn and look at the gunfire. And so whatever they thought was about to come down, which they had said originally said 72 hours. I don't know if the timing is quite 72 hours yet, but whatever it is, those folks are already there. And so they have to go back to help and aid people in getting through the tunnels to safety before everybody is just a casualty. We then spend the rest of this episode with Harold in his home with his wife and Dan and Zoe and the dogs. They're there as well. Harold comes in because his wife is on the phone with the plumber because there's a leak. There's a leak in the house, and they're having she doesn't have anybody there to help her fix it. And so Cheryl is kind of just freaking out, and all of a sudden Harold comes in and is like, "Hey, get off the phone." I know previous times all throughout life I've said we have separated my work from home life and we kept them apart. And if you had any questions, we just didn't answer them. We kept everything outside the door. That stuff's coming in now. And she's aware of Angela. She's aware who Angela belongs. Like she's aware that Angela is Dan's daughter. But outside of that, she does not really into the muck of it all. So she's kind of behind the wool. the wool's being pulled off for her today. She's going to get a crash course into what's actually happening in their life. And so Harold is trying to explain to her that Dan and them are here, but not before Dan and them just come in and be like, hey, look, we can't stay out there anymore. I need to change clothes. I need to get my stuff together. Like, let's start this ball rolling because we need to find a way to get Emily to safety and get Emily out of there. Dan has to go get clothes, so he raids Harold's closet for some new clothes, which is good because I don't think he's changed clothes in this entire for a while now. He might be a little smelly. Um, but he's trying to make calls to Emily. It's to no avail. He's been trying to reach out to her. He's been calling her. He's calling her. He's basically leaving his phone on a table and it's just like, hey, I'm just waiting for a call, but there's been no contact. This whole scene plays really dark and moody and dreary. It's beautiful. Um, Probably because I think Afghanistan was so, while it was dangerous, was so sunny. I think the first couple episodes of the Old Man last year, season one, had some very moody moments. Like that fight sequence that happened outside the car was basically almost set in just red light. This sort of recreates some of that somber, like, I am unsettled because I don't know what's about to occur next. While they await the call, Zoe is concerned about what's going to happen with Morgan, like who's going to take care of his body. Chase don't really give two damns about any of that. Chase is kind of just like, look, real quick, you know him for a second. She even acknowledges, like, yeah, I know I didn't know him that long. But he's like, the people, his help will find him in the morning. He's the least of our concerns right now. He is dead. There's nothing we can do about him. He is more concerned with why someone would kill Morgan, specifically why Pavlovich would do so, because you're killing him on U.S. soil, which is going to come back with a whole bunch of repercussions. Like, there's got to be something other than just, I wanted control of the mineral mines that Hamzat had to go forth with this much of a thing, or there's something that's missing. So Dan is trying to sort of figure that. He's distracting himself a little bit from not being able to reach out to Emily with these thoughts, but eventually Emily does come to the phone. Before we get to the Emily conversation, Harper does have a follow-up conversation with Cheryl alone after being interrupted by Dan and them coming in. To follow up about a piece that I did mention, that Harper, their son, had been moved to go stay with their grandparents. He was going to tell them to go, you guys both leave and go for safety. She's like, I already done that. And he's like, well, why did you do that? And Cheryl says, like, I did not know if you or Angela were coming back home. And so with all the uncertainty, for the first time ever, me not knowing things actually had an effect on me. And I didn't want my son, our kid, to be in sort of limbo. We've already lost one kid. If I lose Angela, and then this is just a lot to sort of deal with, and I don't want to go through any of that. It's at that point that a little bit of the veil is removed for her, and Harper tells her that who Angela truly is, who the true father is. Like, yes, Dan is her father here, but her birthright is to Hamzat. And that Angela Adams was a fabrication. She gets a quick crash course in a lot of the messiness that is going on with all of this untangle. And this is the episode, while it is a bottle, while it is all sort of happening in one setting, it is unraveling. The world that they've sort of built is kind of collapsing in on itself. It's pretty well done. Before the call with Emily, Zoe looks at a couple of photos of Emily with the Harper family and realizes that she was pretty much intertwined. She was a part of their family, way more than I think she had originally put into place there. It's at that point that Dan sort of lets him know, like, this was the arrangement that Harper and I made. Like, when she got intertwined, when kind of connected with Emily, I would sort of sever ties, and kind of give her the idea of what she could and could not say to people about her true identity. But we did everything we could to sort of just keep her safe and build this sort of shield, this bubble around her. And it's always like, oh, this is a lot. A lot of House of Cards have been built to sort of protect Emily. And in this episode, unfortunately, a lot of that comes quickly to a crash. Right before the actual call where Emily comes through, the power goes out. So whatever was already unsettling becomes even more unsettling. It just becomes very moody and dark and just grim, almost a foreboding, if you will. But Emily's call finally comes through and she talks with Dad. And she's kind of like, look, Dad, we don't have much time. It's at that point that Dan quickly tells her Morgan's dead. Like, he just comes right out and says, like, Morgan's gone. We don't know who did it. We have a feeling it's Pavlovich, but she's gone. And before dying, he did not agree to unfreeze any of Hamzad's assets. So you guys are kind of out on your own. You need to get the hell out of Dodge. Like, we need to get you out of there. And Emily's like, I can't. I can't leave them. I'm not leaving them. And it's already a little too late. They're already here. Because Dan sort of gives the heads up, like, that people are coming after you. And she's like, they're here already. And then we start hearing her moving, trying to move people around, trying to move kids around. She's like, have you gotten the kids? I was like, some we have, some we haven't. We're using the tunnels, but this might be it. She informs Dan that Hamzat is dead, and so whatever protection that Hamzat would have been there to give, that's gone anyway. Um, she then puts them on hold for a bit because she has to relocate some folks from one room to another, and that is probably one of the most intense moments in this entire episode, where you're kind of just like, I don't know what's happening to her. Like, she's got them on hold, and they're kind of all just freaking out. You got them all there, like all pieces of her. It's always not so much, but all pieces of her family that had some sort of connection to her are concerned about their daughter, and they can't do anything about it because she's not there physically to help. Harper is doing the rational thing of like trying to figure out, like, how can I help? What can I do? Who can I get to move? Who can I get them to help? Dan is more just like freaking out. Like, I don't know what to do. He's just trying to keep his brain together because it's his girl, and he's not there to protect. He's like, I should have brought her. I should have done more. I should have brought her out. That's basically what's going on in his head. She joins back on the call, and she's like, "Look, this is it. Tunnels are an option. They got them all barricaded. That's where the army, the soldiers that are approaching, are coming from." So it's at this point where she starts saying her goodbyes. She's on speakerphone. She has a conversation with Harper and Emily and says, thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for me. It's more than anybody should ever have had to do. And anybody who has gone through the loss that you have gone before shouldn't have to do this again. But I just want to thank you for everything. He then asked to be taken off the speaker and have a private goodbye to Dan, which she kind of just says, look, this isn't on you. And this isn't on you. And I don't want you to go above and beyond to try to fix this or to make this amends. Just let this go. Like, Dad, I'm asking you to accept everything that has occurred. This is my choice. I did this. This is my choice. And I need you to just let this go. Do not put this on yourself, and do not make a burden on yourself to sort of get the comeback. And then we hear gunfire. We hear gunfire, and then we hear the line die. And yeah, it is visually believed to us as the audience that she is dead. Now, TV magic, TV stuff, based on that scenario, how everything sounds, yes, she would be dead. It sounds like she would be dead. All things point to her being dead. And that is what the audience is to believe. I do say that with TV magic, if we don't see a body, if we don't actually see the killing, I am not as inclined to think that she is dead. But from what everything is said right now, yes, that is the way it is played. And the room just feels haunted at that moment. Like, you can feel like, oh, like the air has just sort of been taken out. That house of cards they built was all for naught, and it just got kind of destroyed right then and there. So in addition to just the feeling of the room and just how everybody's sort of looking at each other and like, wait, what happened? Like, is she gone? Power outage, raining, it just all kind of comes together in this little Bible episode that just puts so much just weight on, like, this is the center of the season. This is the point where we are to believe that Emily, Angela, is no longer there. And so Dan is now an unleashed dog with no hope, which is probably far more dangerous than I think he could have ever been, with still thinking that there's a chance that he could save his daughter. I will say that I think the best piece of this is having what your brain does for yourself. It's kind of like reading a book. What your brain does for yourself when you aren't able to see the other side is fascinating. It becomes more horrifying for yourself. So whatever Angela was going through, we're just hearing the sounds of it and then seeing the reaction of the people who care about her. That is an amazing direction choice, and plays almost like a horror movie. And it's very, very poignant, very, very strong. We then sort of follow up with of the folks and sort of how they're dealing with the ramifications of what just occurred. Dan goes downstairs to try to fix the plumbing. Zoe follows after him, and he's kind of just like, I should have done more. I should have done more. I should have done more. He then has a bit of a moment to sort of break down. As Zoe's trying to be the rational one, trying to rationalize, like, you didn't really have a choice. She sounds like she was going to stay there regardless, and you felt like that was the best thing for her. But Dan is just, he's not in a good way to hear any of that. I do love, between this and if anybody ever watches, has seen Eminem's new video Temporary, seeing men uh, cry about their offspring is, especially as a father, it's just like, it hits hard. And so to know that, like, yeah, the one thing, as tough as nails as Dan is, the one thing that sort of can upend him is his, like, Achilles heel, is something happening to Emily. And now that she's gone, um, it's good that Zoe is sort of there to be that person to sort of lean on, to listen to before he goes dark as shit. The power comes back on, and then Harper comes down. It's like, we got to go. Like, we got to get up out of here. We got to keep moving, because if this is already happening, we need to move. Dan's like, well, we can't move yet. We need to get some answers. And it's at that point that Dan says, you heard the voices on the phone. And Harper's like, yes, I heard them. So it's like, well, what are you guys talking about? And Dan's like, well, those Taliban that were coming in, they weren't speaking their native language. They were speaking Russian. And so I don't know what Pavlovich is doing or done, but he may already have had a team of mercenaries over there. Like, that was Russian speaking. So we don't know how far this goes. So I need to get some answers. So apparently they had one of the people that was at Morgan's place kept alive in the trunk. And they're going to ask him some questions. By ask, I mean torture the hell out of him to get some questions. So you see a scene, it's beautifully shot, where Harper is coming. The shots in this episode are phenomenal. Where Harper is coming towards the house, and Dan just opens the trunk with the red light of the backlit of the trunk opening, and he just takes, like, what I would imagine some bricks, rocks, or whatnot, and just starts pounding the crap out of the hostage that he has before they bring him in a plastic bag and then bring him down to the basement to interrogate him. To this point, that Harper and Dan are kind of having a moment, like, hey, Harper's like, I've done this before. And Dan's like, you ain't done this the way that I'm about to do this. Like, you did this with some modicum of decency because you're in an agency. That ain't how I'm about to roll. So I suggest you go upstairs and go figure out something else. But I'm gonna handle this. You go talk, do it, whatever else you want. But then we see a moment while he's laying into this guy trying to get some answers. Cheryl and Zoe have a moment, heart to heart, drinking some tea because Cheryl is being sort of kept idle by Zoe. Zoe sort of like, keep her busy, basically, is what she's been told to do. And Cheryl knows this. They have a conversation. She's like, look, how do you feel about being the person that doesn't know everything? It's like, well, I know some things and I don't know some things, but they're both sort of in this world of, we're kind of just on the sideline while the guys do all the big thing. While that is happening, Harper goes upstairs to a room where his old son, Chip, who was passed, kind of is in the shadow, and has a conversation with him about how he failed him. And now he's sort of reliving that moment again with Angela now. And so he is sort of bringing that book back up. And he's like, we built all these lies up around you and her and this, and they've all sort of come crashing down. And like always, somehow, even with we think we have everything together, but somehow always the truth sort of just seeps its way out. It's fun to, again, another good piece of the bottle episode is to sort of show how you have everybody come to this point, put the big thing that happens, Emily dying, and then you sort of show how they all sort of deal with their pain. And so the interrogation piece down there, we don't get to see it, thankfully, because I imagine that Dan is having his way with them. Because not only does he want to actually get information, but he's probably taking out a lot of aggression that he has. Harper says that he is saddened that he didn't get to say goodbye to Chip and didn't get a proper goodbye to Emily, because Emily did the talking to them and they didn't really get to say anything back. But that triggers him to thinking, I think it's any last words to her. that triggers him to go to Zoe and be like, "Hey, Zoe, did Morgan say anything? Like, have any last words before he died?" He's like, "No, but he was trying to type something in on his phone and send before he was shot." And that's when Harper's like, "Well," and he was probably trying to send out a message in the event that he died. We need to find out what was on that phone. I have an idea of who it is. And before he can actually say it, Dan comes up from the basement, washing his hands, bloody stuff. He's like, "Yeah, my man didn't know much." It's like he didn't know about anything with Pavlovich's actions in Afghanistan. He had no clue about that. What he did know, however, which is important to this, and what we sort of learned in the last episode, is like he did have two targets, and they failed in hitting the actual person they wanted. Morgan was not their person that they were supposed to hit, or at least not the only person. The target was Zoe. Actually, technically Zoe and Dan, but as their alternate people that they had in season one when they were both the Dixons. That's who was the person to be harmed. And so now, even though Emily is off the board, and he believes that Emily is off the board, there is now still somebody to sort of protect, because now he has to make sure that Zoe gets out of this, because he's sort of endangered her and put her in the muck of all of this, and now he has to do what he can to help her get out of this. And he also now believes that the call, and this is where I was wrong last episode, I thought that call might have been sort of the signal for these people to get there. They already had that information. That call was, well, Dan believes that call was from the lawyer to tell the Dixons, to tell Zoe that, "Hey, I know what's about to come down," and sort of be as a warning. And that's why they want to be in person. It's at that point that Zoe kind of mans up, if you will, and says like, "All right, well, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna head to London, and we're gonna take this fight to Pavlovich." Harper says bye to Cheryl and sends her off to a hotel for a couple of days while he cleans up kind of what's happening here. By cleaning up, that means he is going to go dispose of the body. Which it's another. I'm telling you, this is a well directed episode, and a shot where we see him go down the steps. We see him go one way. It's lit. It's dark. We can see basically a path from the bottom of the steps one way, and then going back the other way. You see him go to his tool shed. And then all of a sudden we see him come back, and just a saw is in his hand. So he's basically going to go cut up the body to dispose of it. Phenomenal shot. And that's the end of the episode. This is probably the first one that didn't really have any action sequences other than the one that we hear. This is a dramatic bottle episode, but it probably is my favorite episode of the series, because there's just a lot of things that were layered in here, both directing wise, acting wise, story wise, all that sort of come together here. And it will pay off very well on the back end of the episode, where we probably will get into more of the action beats and revenge beats that we know the show loves to dabble in. The Emily of it all. I think this can go either way. I mean, it's an FX show, so I think, like the Americans, I think the characters that we might love and start to actually get attached to, you shouldn't, because they will easily take them off the board. But I do think there's a 50-50 shot that if it's Pavlovich's men who have gone into Afghanistan, they may be aware of who Emily is and who Emily is to Dan. And so they may hold her as hostage instead of killing her. There's a small chance of that. But I think it can go either way. And either of them sort of set Dan on a different path. I think his goal right now is to make sure that Zoe is protected and to get some vengeance back. But I think he's going to get to a point that if Pavlovich did keep her alive, he's going to play that card just to kind of buy himself some more time. But great episode. This is the one that kind of kickstarted me into it. I liked what we had gotten before, but this is great television right here. What did you guys think about this episode? Leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere the place podcasts. We're there. Like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.